Thank you, and thank you all for coming to the launch of the book. My name is Ian Strathcarron from Unicorn. We published this book and other art books. I often think publishing art books would be a wonderful business if it wasn't for artists and authors, bookstores and readers. But tonight is the exception that proves the rule. It's been a pleasure working with Max and Robert on this book. What can we say about Strand books? It's absolutely magnificent, beyond institution, and I can see fantastically august group of readers here tonight. The book is very much a sign of the times. As Unicorn, we are in London and Chicago. Max is based here in New York, but flits backwards and forwards to Jerusalem at the drop of a hat. Robert is theoretically from Melbourne, Australia, but we keep getting emails from Shanghai and Ottawa and various Boeings in between. We're launching the book here tonight and in 2 weeks at Waterstones Piccadilly in London. So it's very much your night. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with you. And if you ever decide to do a sequel, I hope we can do it together. Lastly, just to remind you that books are on sale here. They are back there. They're $45 signed or $50 unsigned. Over to you.
So thank you very much, Ian. Thank you very much, Nancy. It's an unbelievable pleasure to be here. I've just spent the afternoon in my other incarnation at the George Soros Institute, where I work in international health, trying to get funding for one of our TB programs in Myanmar. Writing does not produce much of an income. So for many of us, I know it's a passion. And I was thinking about the two worlds that I have as a writer and as a medical sociologist, which is what my day job is. And how, in fact, this collaboration with Max goes back to 1985, which you don't know. And I only thought about as I was walking. I walked from Soros on the top of Broadway down, all the way down, because it seemed like a good idea. It's a long walk, but it was a nice walk. And I was thinking that in 1985, I was asked to come over to Washington to speak at a congressional hearing to explain what was happening around HIV prevention in Europe, because we were trying to get the Reagan administration to take on harm reduction programs to halt the spread of HIV. Now, I spent a very interesting night in New York, and 20 years later, I wrote a short story called Meatloaf in Manhattan that was loosely based on that night in New York. And if you ever get to read the short story, it's mostly fiction, I promise you. And what happened in 2012 is I was looking for a cover for the collection of short stories called Meatloaf in Manhattan, and my designer stumbled across a painting called Mr. Softy, which I don't know if anyone has seen that, but it's in the collection. It's an ice cream van set in Manhattan or somewhere in New York at night time with an ice cream vendor who looks a cross between Max, Tom Waits and Lyle Lovett. That's how I saw it. And I was intrigued by this cover. It had nothing really to do with the story, but I said we've got to have that picture. So we got the rights to use it as a cover, and I was so taken by this image, I started looking at some of Max's work, and I thought, what I'll do, I'll send him a thank you. So I got his email, and I sent him a very, very short story about Mr. Softy. And my idea was Mr. Softy actually really wanted to be a songwriter. I had no idea that Max, A, was a songwriter, B, is obsessed by music, but the idea was the Mr. Softy character wanted to be a songwriter, and he'd go past the Apollo and he'd listen to music all around town and make up songs. Sent it to Max, and he sent me back a very nice email. So, oh, this is a lovely story. He liked it. And then without further ado, I started looking at his back catalogue, right back to the 70s. I think the oldest picture in the collection is 1979, Andrea in Florence. I think that's the oldest one. And I started looking at his pictures and realized that what his pictures do to me is what I do when I try to write fiction. It's about what might be happening. So if you look at his pictures, you think, what has just happened? What is going on in that person's life? What might be occurring round the corner? So I started just writing for my own. It was a bit like, I run marathons, so I train for marathons. I write novels, so I thought I'll do some training for novel writing by writing very short stories that will only fit on one page. But I became mildly obsessed with this. So I have a day job in a university in Melbourne, but I was moonlighting. I'd be doing my day job thinking about HIV prevention in Tibet, or public health and TB prevention in Papua New Guinea, all of which I'm involved in. But at the same time, I'd have a story on the go, and I'd have a picture in my head. It would be Mr. Gordon looking across the river. And Mr. Gordon, I promise you, your father, would be talking to me. He'd be saying, this is the story. So it went from this one email to Max about Mr. Softy, which I think is a nice story, it's in there now, to 5 to 10, and I'd email them to Max. And Max and I are kind of a bit symbiotic. My wife said we've had a 3-year bromance. We've never met. The first time we met was at Penn Hotel on Saturday night after I'd taken the train from Montreal. I was at an HIV conference in Montreal. I'd taken the train, beautiful train journey if you've never done it, from Montreal to Penn Station, stopped off at Saratoga Springs because I thought, what an idea, what a beautiful town that is. And Max, he didn't meet me at the station, but he met me at the Penn Hotel. We'd spoken once in 3 years. He was in Jerusalem, I was in Melbourne. We had a 10-minute conversation. And that's the only time we'd spoken, and the only time we'd done. But we developed, as my wife had said, this bromance. Oh, you're writing to Max, are you? You're sending Max another email. What has Max got to say now? And we talked about fatherhood in later life. We talked about loss of parents. We talked about playing pool. We talked about music. We had a fantastic relationship going. But I would send him these stories. Sometimes, and please don't tell the University of Melbourne or the University of Monash or the Burnett Institute where I work, on a daily basis. And then you may understand that Max has got some kind of obsessive characteristics because you couldn't paint like this otherwise. So have I. And I got to this notion that every story would have to be exactly 500 words. So if you get a chance to read them, feel free to count the words. The dots don't count as a word. There are exactly 500 words per story. Exactly 500 words per story. So we carried on with this relationship, and it built up to 40 stories over about 2 years. And then we had the idea maybe this was a project. No, we never spoke about it as a project. It was just a game of table tennis across continents. I'd send him, I'd serve a story, he'd respond. At one point he said to me, do you want to know anything about the stories? Do you want the backstory? And we had this agreement. I think it was a classic Max, A, B or C. Which one do you want? D. I said, I'll go for D, which means don't you dare say a word because that would spoil it. The only thing we did do is one time, for example, I put a art dealer in Queens. And he said, art dealers don't live in Queens. Is there an art dealer that lives in Queens in the room? I've no idea. I'd no idea. I had no idea where Queens was. Or I'd say things like the man's solicitor, and he'd say, no, it's an attorney. Or the thing you push a baby around in, I'd say the baby was pushed around in a pram. He'd say, no, it's a stroller. That's the only kind of editorial collaboration we had. Other than that, the stories from my mind was just imagining and envisaging what was happening or what might happen. And some of them are total fantasy. Some of them are actually based on a little bit of truth. There's a story about Billy's Topless, which is an old strip joint of some description. And I just wanted to check out something about that story. And there is a really dark secret about that bar. And I embellished on that and used that as a basis of one of the stories. So, and then, as Ian said, you have to take a punt and look for a publisher. We were recommended to go to Ian. We had 41 stories, 41 pictures, and Ian said, for some reason, I don't know why, we have to have 60. So the next 19 days, I kind of quit the day job, went on a bit of leave, and wrote 19 new stories. So it's been an extraordinary collaboration. I mean, sometimes you meet people in life. I mean, when I met him, I knew. In fact, it's very funny, Max, because he met me in the lobby of the Penn Hotel, and he said, "Is it going to be like a Hollywood moment where we'd kind of come together?" But I didn't know what was going to happen, but we actually didn't, because there was a sort of something in the middle, and he went round one side and I went round the other side. If it'd been in slow motion, it'd been like this. But It's been a fantastic collaboration. I do hope you enjoy the stories. I mean, it's been one of the most interesting literary experiences of my life, and as Ian says, and I always think I will continue to do Ferguson. So I think as quickly as you produce them, and that was. Some of them are wet on the canvas, literally as I was writing the story. So thank you very much for indulging me in that little story to tell you, and look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you very much indeed.
I remember back in the 70s hanging out with Andy Warhol at Studio 54, and there was this one night when David Bowie and Mick Jagger came by with this great Coke, and I had you going there for a second tonight. So it's my party, and I'll lie if I want to. Just very briefly, Robert, of course, said some things that I was going to say, but. Essentially, when Robert began writing these stories, I was delighted and tickled pink and other colors on my palette. And honestly, as I think I've told Robert, had he been an awful writer, I would have been delighted by it, because what could be more flattering than an author writing all these stories that were inspired by my paintings. But I'm a tremendous fan of his work. It's he's really quite brilliant, and he really has a poet's touch to his writing. And it's as once you read through the stories, you'll see this incredible diversity. And I think in lesser hands, it would have been like some bad actor who was trying different parts and not quite getting a hang of it. In his case, like an assured very good actor, each voice is as strong as the next. So I think you'll enjoy that. Now, I had sent a bunch of emails to all of you saying that you did not have to buy a book. In fact, the doors have been bolted, and you cannot leave without buying at least 10 copies each. But seriously, folks. So, and as you probably noticed, we have some wonderful models here who have been in the paintings. So once you do buy your 10 copies, they can sign them as well. One thing I did want to mention, that as this project has developed, I must confess that at a certain point I began, thinking like, okay, will this painting appeal to Robert, etc. And honestly, it's been very helpful to me in that the paintings that I feel inspire Robert are my better paintings, and that's really, it has helped point me in the direction I want to go in terms of a hinted narrative element, a degree of mystery, as I was explaining to some before, about giving each viewer a number of question marks and pieces of the puzzle, and letting them assemble them as they may. And just now, I forgot a prop. Just one minute. As Robert mentioned, this was the book. The collection of short stories he did, which used my painting on the cover, called Meatloaf in Manhattan, and that sort of started it all. So I think, Robert, you're going to do the first reading. We'll just do a few readings. As you know, the stories are quite short, so Robert will go first, and then I think I'll go, and then Ben Modell is here tonight. He's the pianist. If you've never had the pleasure of seeing and especially hearing him play, it's a delight. He specializes in playing to accompany silent films, and he was very nice enough, after everyone else at MoMA said no, he was nice enough to arrange to have a private screening of Pandora's Box with Louise Brooks, and so I did both a watercolor study and then the oil, which is on the cover. So you'll be nice enough to read. And then Ken Dashow should be here soon, and he'll be reading. And so Robert, hello, Robert, Earth Robert. I'm sorry?
We don't have the picture on the
No. Which one are we doing?
I'm doing the girl with the knee.
The girls. Okay. If you open your hymn books to the very last page, you can get an idea of that. So, okay, do it.
Okay, right. If you haven't got the hymn book, let me just paint the picture for you. So it's this beautiful Loara model. So maybe you could come to the front and strike the pose. Would you be so gallant? So this picture is extremely inspirational for lots of reasons. I'll just very briefly tell you the background. It's the picture of Luara as the model looking at the Vermeer that's in the Met. It's the Vermeer that's called the young woman with a pitcher as in a jug. I don't know if you know that painting. It's in the... So if you look at the painting, if it was on the screen, which we don't have, unfortunately, sits here like this, so you were looking this way. And I just want to tell you that the Vermeer, if you're not familiar with it, it's a young woman with a pitcher of water looking out of a window, and behind her, which is very important to the story, there's a very ancient map of the world. So she's got this longing look out of the window. This young woman, who I call Miranda, is looking at the painting. And then Max has actually used exactly the same frame for the... We do have it. And now you can tell me it looks nothing like I've tried to explain it. So this...
And appropriately, Luara, the model,
yeah.
will hold it.
Okay. So does anyone think that approximated to my description? Now, so the idea is that she's looking at the painting, and she, in my envisaging of this painting, she's called Miranda. So this is the story. It only goes to 500 words. You can click the words off in your mind as you like, but don't feel free not to. Okay. Since she was a little girl, for as long as she can remember, Miranda believed that what Alice said was so very true, that like Alice, her reality was just different from yours. Different from her mother's, who told her to be more like her sister, different from her sisters, who chased Miranda to grow up and act more like an adult, and different from her teachers, who reported year in, year out that she should pay more attention to her lessons and less to her daydreams. But it was her daydreams that she relished, dreams of being elsewhere, somebody other. Not that she'd ever say as much, she'd just smile at her mother, ignore her sister, lower her eyes at teacher-parent interviews. In the town where she lived, a town like Alice, she used to say, mimicking the black and white movie she loved, that seemed so unlike the world her family thought they lived in. And as a young child, sitting outside church, she'd look into people's faces as they walked by, trying to fathom what they made of it all. The little events, the comings and goings of life, everyone's own distinct view of the world. She would imagine being each one, the babe in arms, the old man with the walking stick, the stray dog, the priest in his finery, the street cleaner, the unique world that lived inside every head. But the strangest thing of all to her was that it was never Alice, even when she was in Wonderland, who said her reality was different from yours. Rather, someone imagining Alice thinking that way. So when she became an adult woman, not Alice, who never would, but Miranda, who did, and ran away to live in New York, she'd spend hours in art galleries, looking at one painting at a time. She had her favourites, pictures that she returned to, spend time with, best of all on a weekday, first thing in the morning, before the crowds, just gazing, envisioning other worlds, different ways of seeing. And every time, as on this November morning that she studied Vermeer's young girl holding the water jug, she'd stare and stare until, like Alice and the looking glass, she'd step into the painting. She'd smile the young girl's smile and see what she saw in the world outside. Hear the neighing of the horses, the clanking of the bridle and harness, the clatter of the wheels. Watch the coach as it passed by, disappearing at the corner. Then she would turn from the window, careful not to spill any water from the picture. She'd look up at the map on the wall and imagine herself far away in another town, in another life, just as she did as a young girl self searching for the rabbit hole. Like the time Miranda found a map of Australia, put her finger on a town like Alice, deep in the deserty red centre, closed her eyes, clicked her heels and waited. Thank you.
So Robert has no idea what I'm about to do. I'm not sure I do either, but we'll go. So I've noticed over the years people often compare me to different actors, And the consistency is that it's never people like Clint Eastwood or Sean Connery or John Hamm. It's always these it's always these highly neurotic actors, more often than not, playing psychotic characters. I'm not sure why this is, but bearing that in mind. So if you can, all right. So again, if you turn to your hymn books on page 79, you will see this. And what I did discover in our email exchange, Robert is very into chess, so I would not advise playing with him, especially for money. But here you go. So. I like the watch, indeed I do, but first $5 from you who's read the books will lose on time. Your little flag will fall so sad, and I'll sigh and say you would have won, but for the time, what an enemy is time. You play such a strong game. Never in a long while have I met with such imagination against my Sicilian defense. You read the game so well, but for time you would have won. But I must hold off for now, even though you haven't seen the fork I'm building on F4 that I could spring in 3 moves, but I'll ignore it and let you think I don't know the Alekhine Capablanca game you're copying, trying to copy, and the A3 G3 reply, for if you do, you may not wager your watch when I suggest it, having seen the only bill you've in your threadbare wallet is $5, and I reckon I could get $60 from Oppenheimer's pawnbrokers on 122nd Street for such a watch, and your friend in the hat like your hat has a keen eye, and I fancy will want to take on this Macedonian Grandmaster, would like to try a battle of wills, but I've read all the books you two have read, have played all the games you two have played, and can read your minds, and will take your $5 and all your notes the friend wishes to hand me. $5 for 5 minutes. The minute hand is all that counts. Then you watch, and when I go to Oppenheimer's and get my money, I'll walk to Ed's Diner and order meatloaf in Manhattan, product placement, with gravy and beet salad, because I know all the games you'll ever play, even those from Fisher the Dew-hater after he went madder, and those who went before and after him, and Polger the oldest sister, who comes here and weaves in patterns to confuse the bookworms, the students who play with their heads, not their hearts, until they created the machine with emotions that cried its way to victory over the world champion, for this is my land, my park, with no plush armchairs and smoking jackets, like my big black friend who plays like a heavyweight boxer with his wraparound sunglasses and dreadlocks, shouting, blood clot under pressure, you can run, but you cannot ever hide. Next! Not my way to hustle and cajole, but gently ensnare a mistake, even leave a pawn fruit for the picking, a gift for you to lull you into some sense, and the flag falls, and I shake your hand in this, ah yes, my park, and alas, but for the clock, time is so cruel. Another game, sir? Or your friend in the fine hat? I think he saw a move I missed. Is that not true, sir? From the look in your eyes, yes, on move 17, the bishop move, a favorite of Korchnoi, but you know that from your reading. Another game? Thank you.
Lulu in New York. Now that the auditorium has emptied of the chatter and the noise, the audience filtered through exits left and right, the tide of their ceaseless words having fallen gentle as confetti in their wake. Vowels and syllables, consonants and phrases carpeting the passageways, the aisles and foyer. No more footsteps, no more shuffling, no more sound. I can breathe a sigh, I can settle into the silence. And what did they hear when they saw you? You, whose tongue has been plucked from your mouth, a songbird in the nest, quietened, there on the silver screen, so vulnerable, so accessible. They watched and they waited and they read the words, the scripted words, words never to be voiced. Conjuring sounds, imagining cadence, spoon-fed love and resolution. They, who know nothing of you, know nothing. But I do. I have heard you speak, heard your laughter, your sad confessions. Know the timbre of your singing. I keep the secret of your voice locked away. And now, in the blessed silence, after the event, it is our time. No sheet music to come between us. No lily-livered words, sugary words. My music, my symphony. My love song to you from the very tips of my fingers, from the very well of my being. Wordless also, reaching out as you move with such grace, with such ease. High up and out of reach where none could ever touch you, though many tried, though many thought they did, even paid you for the charade of intimacy. You apart, even as an innocent, the little girl forced to open a Pandora's box of sorts, you danced and you sang. And those that came to damn and blacken you, even whored a voice to speak your lines, kept you muted and at a distance, oceans hence. They could not dampen your singularity, a uniqueness that surpassed all other goddesses of the age, even those you bedded to sparkle at. So I will play on, like Debussy, like Ravel, like your mother with the only love she was able to give to you. There is complicity in my serenade. There is understanding in the space that moves between us. And I will play and play, my fingers caressing the keys, my eyes fixed upon the screen as you rehearse and repeat again the movements, the expressions, the poses, the twists and turns. And I will play for you, to you, until I am spent, until I can play no more. Then, later at night, in my single room down by Canarsie Park, it is not your face or your hair or your skin I dream of, but your voice, the nightingale singing, soaring, and I pierce my heart with the ancient thorn of a blood-red rose, and I weep at the pure beauty, the exquisite pain, the echo of all that is yet unrequited, all that is yet to be fulfilled. Thank you.
Ken Dashow is not here yet. We give him a really hard time when he gets here. And there he is. Okay, so I have to just say a few words about Ken. Many of you know him as a DJ for many, many years in New York. I went to NYU with him. And I have to warn you something about Ken. If you speak to him afterwards, he has these delusional fantasies about meeting rock stars backstage. So if he says anything about meeting these rock stars, just say yes, very nice. Yeah, I understand. So okay, Ken will come, and now you need a book because you didn't want to carry your book all day. So.
Hi, by the way, thank you so much. It's wonderful when somebody of this level is somebody who's an old friend that you went to get cheap beer with at NYU as a film student. And am I allowed to speak about this painting for a moment? It's great artist. If you know this Yankee Stadium and this hot dog vendor, and it's one of my favorite moments that I've ever had. I worship my friend's work, and he has painted me, and I've taken some pictures that were the basis for some of the things in this book. But it's one of my favorite phone calls that I got when Max said, this thing, I believe it's called baseball. And there's this place, Yankee Stadium, and I'm doing a painting on it. And there's this horrible yellow stick in the middle of the painting. I'm told it's a foul pole. Do I have to paint it? And I said, why, yes, you do. He said, why? I said, because you have to know if the ball's fair or foul. You can make up a stadium anywhere you want. You can create a different thing, but if you're painting Yankee Stadium, there's a yellow foul pole. Does it have to be yellow? Yes, it does. And I always am very proud of that foul pole, Max. I feel like, in a way, it's the Ken Dashow Yankee Stadium foul pole. And what he's always done in every single one of these paintings is I always read into who these people are, what the moment is. And that's why I was so taken with this book, to have somebody of such quality, an author, bring these people to life 24/7. We all have our own people that we project into it. And I never in a million years would have thought of this as our hot dog vendor. But it's brilliant. If I may. Ben, look, the hot dog guy. It's him. Which hot dog guy? Where? There, quick, before he goes by. You see? It's him. Quick, Ben, turn now. It was never proved. Though these days the media will have you strapped and sizzling in the electric chair on Rikers Island before you've paid your first lawyer's bill. Just look at Michael Jackson. OJ, Oscar Pistorius. I mean, you might get away with, I never had sex with that woman, or these gloves could never fit this guy's hands. But what do people remember? What do they all talk about? It's daytime TV and all these tabloid headlines that sail one gust of breeze this side of the yacht. There's no need for wood to be crucified these days. So when, let's call him hot dog seller number 59, to preserve his anonymity, even though you all know who I'm talking about. So when HDS 59 for short was poolside the evening the starlet drowned, oh, the media had a field day. You'd need to have been living on Mars then not to have seen or heard all the accusations. Her mother on chat shows telling tales of late-night phone calls and black eyes, tearfully lamenting of life of such sparkling promise so tragically cut short. Then there were his kiss-and-tell girlfriends coming out of the woodwork, followed by the trial and the circumstantial evidence from her Facebook account and the text messages he sent her the day before. There's a lesson there. But we all know that. Easy to be wise after the event. All his money got sucked into legal fees to finance the appeal. Inevitably, he was replaced on the sequel. The studio told him to focus on clearing his name. Best all around. We'll get back to you. The stand-in, the young dreamboat from Tucson, Arizona, he was a smash hit. So naturally, he was signed up for the prequel and the sequel to the prequel. These films grossed in the hundreds of millions. So HDS 59's phone stayed silent. Then there was the drama of the officer who tampered with the evidence. The acquittal, followed by the drug use confessional, the bankruptcy, the inevitable rehabs, the crazy new counselor turned girlfriend turned rabbit boiler. Then the infamous fight on the set of the Series 4 of I'm a D-lister celebrity, get me the hell out of here. Not a good look slapping the show's host. Even worse, that she was a woman. Most unfortunate that she looked uncannily like the drowned starlet. You're right, Stevie. You are. It's him. Wasn't he in Star Wars? No, he was in the other one. You know, the galaxy one with the tree thing. Oh, yeah, and the raccoon. No, not that one. No, it wasn't the raccoon one. Who cares? Yeah, who cares? But it was him. The one who did it. Killed that girl. You strangled her. Dumped her in the lake. Hey, should we call him back for a hot dog? Nah, too late. Next time. Yeah, maybe.